Okay, let's dive right into one of the most incredible underdog stories in history, straight out of the Three Kingdoms era. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're looking at an absolute masterclass in crisis leadership, resource management, and just pure, stubborn resilience. Seriously, if you've ever felt like your business or your team was completely outmatched by some massive industry giant, you're definitely going to want to take notes on Zhu Ran.
So, picture this ultimate stress test. Imagine waking up to find your city, or, thinking in a modern sense, your entire market share, completely surrounded by an unstoppable force. And you have to figure out how to survive. You've got exactly 5,000 personnel. Meanwhile, the competition has brought an overwhelming, almost unbelievable wave of resources right to your doorstep. What's your strategy here? Do you just fold, or do you fight?
Well, that was the exact mathematical nightmare facing Eastern Wu general Zhu Ran. A staggering troop disparity where he was outnumbered 10 to 1. I mean, in any professional scenario, being out-resourced 10 to 1 usually means an immediate, unavoidable hostile takeover. But the thing is, Zhu Ran didn't panic, not even a little bit.
Section 1. A Bond Forged in Youth. To really understand why Zhu Ran didn't just throw his hands up and surrender, we have to look back at where his unwavering loyalty actually started. Every great leader relies on a solid foundation of trust, right? And Zhu Ran's network was built long before he ever faced a battlefield. Originally named Shi Ran, he was adopted into the Zhu family. But the real game changer for him? He grew up studying martial arts and strategy literally side by side with the future emperor Sun Quan. They weren't just colleagues, they were classmates who became absolute brothers in arms. It's basically the ultimate example of networking and building absolute trust with key stakeholders early on in your career.
And Sun Quan saw his childhood friend's genius super early on. He famously said, "Yifeng has talent, he will achieve great things." Yifeng, by the way, was Zhu Ran's courtesy name. This quote really highlights an absolutely crucial aspect of professional growth, having a mentor or an executive leader who recognizes your potential and builds that deep, brotherly affection and absolute trust that completely defines your career path.
Section 2. Capturing a Legend.
But, as we all know, potential is absolutely nothing without execution. Before facing his ultimate test, Zhu Ran had to prove he was way more than just the emperor's best buddy. He needed a solid track record. His rise didn't just happen overnight, but his career skyrocketed in 219 AD with an absolutely monumental achievement. This led directly to his ultimate crisis point in 222 AD, and eventually capped off a lifelong, wildly successful career until his passing at age 68.
Let's quickly break down that resume. Zhu Ran found his niche early on. He specialized in city defense. But his real breakout moment? By capturing the legendary, almost mythic general Guan Yu at Linju in 219 AD, Zhu Ran proved his tactical brilliance to everyone. Think of it as the equivalent of a scrappy little startup acquiring a massive competitor's absolute top asset. Because of this massive win, he earned the incredibly heavy responsibility of guarding Jiangling, which was Eastern Wu's vital western stronghold.
Section 3. The Impossible Siege of 222 AD.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how this perfectly sets the stage for the climax of our story. You know how it goes. You get the big promotion, you get the massive territory, and then boom, immediately you face the biggest crisis of your entire life. Historical texts show the rival Wei state launched a massive, totally determined assault to just crush Jiangling. Think of this as a highly coordinated, hostile market expansion by an absolute industry titan. They saw Eastern Wu as vulnerable, and they brought literally everything they had to take this key logistical hub.
The contrast here is just staggering. A lone defensive force of just 5,000 personnel, going head-to-head against tens of thousands of Wei invaders. The sheer scale of the threat would make most decision-makers completely fold on day one and start frantically looking for an exit strategy. When you actually visualize that tiny sliver of Wu defenders compared to the overwhelming wave of Wei soldiers, it's a terrifying 1-to-10 ratio. So the big question is, how do you optimize your resources when you are outmatched this severely?
And to make matters even worse, the Wei army didn't just have the sheer numbers, they had all-star leadership. We're talking about being led by some of the most famous, intimidating commanders of the entire era, Cao Zhen, Xiahou Shang, and Zhang He. They arrived loud, totally confident in their victory, and perfectly ready to just sweep Zhu Ran right off the board. It was this massive show of force deliberately meant to break the defender's psychology before the real fighting even started.
So what exactly was the Wei strategy? Well, step by step, the Wei forces turned Jingling into a completely isolated island.
They attacked with overwhelming force, and their engineers actually built pontoon bridges to effectively cut off all of Jingling's supply chains. No outside rescue, no extra capital flowing in. Zhu Ran was completely, utterly on his own.
This is the absolutely crucial point. How did Zhu Ran react? He didn't just hunker down behind his walls and wait to go bankrupt. No, he initiated an active defense. First up, he maintained absolute calm, which honestly is the #1 rule for any leader in a crisis. Second, he maximized his extremely limited resources by ordering his soldiers to repair the city walls while literally under enemy fire. And finally, the masterstroke. He dispatched his elite troops for these daring, highly disruptive night raids. He completely messed with the competitors' operations, keeping that massive Wei army constantly off balance.
And you have to understand, this wasn't just some quick little skirmish. This brutal, grinding standoff lasted for 6 agonizing months. Half a year. Half a year of constant pressure, dwindling supplies, and relentless daily attacks. It was the ultimate test of organizational endurance.
But here is exactly where the tide turns. Over that half a year, Zhu Ran's unbreakable defense completely drained the Wei army's morale. The big, bloated competitor had vastly overextended itself. Frustration set in deep, and then an unpredictable external variable hit. In this case, disease swept through the Wei camps. Having suffered heavy casualties with absolutely nothing to show for it, the once mighty Wei army was forced into a completely humiliating retreat.
Section 4. Legacy of the Iron Wall.
Let's look at the aftermath and see how this incredible victory cemented his place in history forever. You don't just survive a 1-10 siege and then fade into obscurity, right? You become a brand. Remember that childhood trust we talked about at the very beginning? Emperor Sun Quan's early faith was completely, undeniably validated. He famously declared, "With Yi Fang defending Jiangling, I have no worries." Knowing his childhood friend could hold the empire's borders against totally impossible odds, that provided the ultimate return on investment for their lifelong relationship.
And Zhu Ran was deeply, deeply rewarded for it. Historical records detail how he was elevated to Great Commander, or Da Sima. If we're translating that to corporate terms, that is the absolute top of the C-suite. Literally the highest military honor in all of Eastern Wu.
He wasn't just seen as a survivor anymore. He became the ultimate symbol of defense. He defeated Cao Zhen's massive army, and he earned a nickname that echoed all across the land, the Iron Wall of Jiangling. He served faithfully until he peacefully passed away at 68, mourned deeply by his lifelong friend and emperor, and he passed that incredible legacy of unwavering loyalty right down to his son.
The final historical texts absolutely confirm his legendary status. Zhu Ran was, without a shadow of a doubt, the #1 defensive general in all of Eastern Wu. He proved to everyone that with the right strategy, a proactive defense, and just unshakable resolve, even a much smaller, agile force can completely break the will of a massive giant.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to end on today. Think about it. In your own life, in your own career, when the resources completely run dry and the competition surrounds you on all sides, if you were completely isolated and outnumbered 10-1, would you have the resolve to stay calm, strike back in the dark, and become an iron wall? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing those strategies, and I'll catch you on the next one.